Om Shanti and welcome back to Light of Knowledge. Our guest today, as in our previous episodes, is Meera Didi, who's the director of Brahma Kumaris in Malaysia. Our topic of discussion in this episode today is going to be being spiritual. There's a lot of confusion out there. What is spirituality? What is religion? Is it any different from each other? How do we be spiritual? So we are going to get answers to these questions and many more from Meera Didi today. Om Shanti Didi and welcome back.
Thank you.
Didi, like this episode is about being spiritual. The first question that comes to mind is, what exactly does it mean to be spiritual?
When we think about the word spiritual, many connotations and things comes to one's mind. Maybe some people connect spiritual to something beyond this world, something like angel, ghost or God, or something extraterrestrial objects. But in fact, spirituality is very simple. It's nothing connected with these things. For me, spiritual means to be able to understand the difference between human and being, and to live in the being consciousness. Spiritual also means to know myself, who I am, and attain mastery over one's own self. Spirituality is also very much connected with the core values, to live with the core values in our life. And I could also say that spirituality is taking responsibility to bring positive change in one's life.
So to me it sounds like spirituality and religion. It's really nothing to do with each other in terms of do you have to be religious in order to be spiritual or vice versa?
Not necessarily, because somebody who is religious may not be spiritual at all. Nowadays it has become too much of a show, but someone who is spiritual may not be religious. So what is more important is to understand the knowledge behind these words. And so when you really understand the definition of spirituality, you would know that it is possible to be a spiritual person without performing rituals and believing in dogmas and theories and tall stories that what we hear every day in our life.
Exactly. So if I don't go to the temple or the church, if I don't read my religious scriptures every day, if I don't pray, can I still be considered to be spiritual?
Yeah, because spirituality is something different beyond all these things, because that's why they say that spirituality unites, religion divides, So for me, spirituality is very much connected with wisdom. Wisdom and spirituality, I could say they go together. And wisdom is connected with awakening our conscience. To live with an awakened conscience is what is spirituality is all about. That is why a spiritual life is sometimes connected with a life of enlightenment. So that is what we need to seek for, wisdom, in order to be spiritual.
Now when we say wisdom again, are we talking about wisdom in our daily life or wisdom when it comes to understanding the higher laws? Or
no, wisdom in our daily life. For example, spirituality is made up of 5 core values: peace, love, truth, mercy and forgiveness. So if I am living my daily life based on even in any one of these core values, I am said to be spiritual.
That's a very interesting point that you made here, that if we can just hold on to even one value in our life, of the 5 that you have mentioned, and if we make that as our main course of our life, then maybe automatically all the other values will fall in.
It's connected. It's interconnected. It cannot be separated. Because you cannot love someone if you are not peaceful.
That's right.
And if you are peaceful and loving, you will be automatically merciful.
That's right. That's right. So how do we develop this one quality? I mean, say love, for example, which is a very need of the hour, if I may say. How do I develop this power?
See, there is a misconception today when we talk about love. People always connect this core value of love with body. You know, because we connect this word love with body, so we begin to use that love and misuse it, abuse the word. But in fact, love is nothing to do with the body.
Okay.
Love is a value of the soul. I am a being of love. So in order to understand that, first of all, I have to know myself, who I am.
Right.
No, spirituality is all about discovering, rediscovering myself.
Okay.
So when I am able to rediscover myself, that I am love, so I don't need to look out for love. And I am not being attracted to the physical in order to be loved or in order to be loving.
Right, right. When I say I am a spiritual person, is there the characteristics of faith, you know, or what do I have faith in order to be spiritual? I mean, here the same question that we discussed in our earlier episode about God and, you know, belief in God. So in order to be spiritual, do I need to have faith in God, or can I be spiritual just by acquiring these characteristics like love and
No,
happiness?
actually, first the basic thing is I need to understand the difference between the human and being and develop the being conscience.
Okay.
Because when I develop the consciousness, what we call soul consciousness, then I am able to emphasize on the values of the soul. So to live a value-based life is what is called spirituality.
Okay.
And use those values in our daily life. For example, human beings are supposed to be kind, mankind. So today we see a cruelty instead of kindness, you know, hate instead of love. This is because we are going beyond spirituality.
Right.
And so when I embrace spirituality, I am able to be honest with myself. I am able to be sincere with myself. I am able to be at peace with others, and I am able to cooperate with others. So live together as one family.
Right. It sounds very interesting the way you've put it. So spirituality seems like the way of life.
Yeah, it is a way of life,
Right.
and we can bring spirituality in our daily life.
Right.
So that is why the symbol of spirituality I always use is the lotus flower. You know, lotus flower is a beautiful symbol of wisdom and spirituality, which means that you live in this life, in this world, and not affected by what is happening around you, detached and loving. That is a way of life of spirituality.
Right.
So you don't need to run away, you don't need to do any rituals, you don't need to participate in any ceremonies, but practically living in the family, performing activities, fulfilling my responsibility, and yet I can be spiritual. So which also means that you appreciate others as they are,
Right.
you accept others as they are, and you become an observer when you see the part of others, and then you accept your own role and play it happily.
Right. Right. You know, about when you say human being and spiritual being, the question that comes to mind is, are we human beings with a spiritual experience, or are we spiritual beings who are living as human beings?
We are spiritual beings in the human body.
Okay.
So because without the spirit, the body is of no use.
That's right.
You know, the moment the spirit departs from this body, the body has no value.
Right. Right.
But then as long as we are living, we don't remember that. It's only the day when the soul, the spirit departs, that is the time we become aware. But if you are living spirituality, if you are ignited the light of the soul and live in that enlightened life, so you are able to lead a life of wisdom. You know, life of wisdom means to have consideration, to allow others to be as they are and allow yourself to be as you are.
Right.
So in a way, we are able to accept and
Right.
move along in unity and cooperation.
Right. I, as an example, I like rituals. For example, I like the pujas and the prayers and everything that goes with it. But I do understand that it has some limitations as well. So I have read so much about spirituality, for example, and can I bring a balance between religion or being religious and spiritual?
Yeah, it is possible because, if you are doing something with understanding, that's what I came to know after coming to Raj Yoga. Before, I used to follow some religious customs and systems with blind faith. Like, for example, celebrating festivals. It's nothing wrong. If you are spiritual, it's nothing wrong to celebrate festivals. But we must understand the meaning, spiritual meaning, why it is done that way, why it should be done this way. So, with understanding, when you do something, it makes a lot of difference.
That's right.
Otherwise, it's blind faith. So, religion can be blind faith. But spirituality is not blind.
Right.
It is enlightened life.
Right.
Yeah.
So every action I perform religiously, if I can do it with the understanding that this is helping me grow. I mean, not just keep it restricted to the act, but if I tell myself that this is helping me grow, this is helping me be a better person, then maybe that is my step toward spirituality.
And also spirituality, another aspect is a life of balance. Because when there is no balance between, like say, body and soul, then you are not able to have peace of mind.
Right.
Even, for example, emotions and analytical aspect. There are people who are only emotional.
Right.
And there are people who are very analytical, so they are critical. So spirituality actually creates balance between our emotions and also the analytical aspect.
Okay.
So the head and the heart. So I call it as the marriage of the head and the heart.
Okay.
So when the head and the heart is working together, we are able to awaken our inner conscience.
Okay.
So in spirituality and wisdom, we awaken our conscience.
Okay.
Everybody has something called conscience, and it's already guiding us constantly, whispering us, but many times we don't listen to it.
What is the reason for that?
The reason is because we are totally in body consciousness.
Okay.
So when we are body conscious, our intellect is kind of sleeping.
Okay.
So the moment I become aware of my spiritual identity in this body, that awakening of that the bringing that new consciousness into my life awakens my conscience.
Okay.
And then I'm able to listen to the whisper more often.
Okay.
And then once I'm able to awaken that conscience in my life, I am able to develop my power of discerning.
Okay.
So my intellect becomes divine.
Okay.
So spirituality is like opening of the third eye, I could say.
Okay.
So with spirituality, you allow your third eye of wisdom, third eye of knowledge to open.
Okay, that's very
So
nice.
you are able to see more than the visible through your eyes.
Okay.
You are able to know more than what you know about the present time. And so our life becomes more unlimited.
It sounds very wonderful. I mean, I'm sure our listeners out there are convinced now that, being spiritual is going to actually help you live a balanced life.
Yeah. And most important is that you become a wise person, because, you can go to academic college and institution to educate yourself, and you can get degrees, you can get a job. But still, you may not be a wise person. You can be an intellectual.
Right.
So with spirituality, you are able to balance your intelligence with wisdom.
Okay, very nice.
So, and particularly at this point of time, we need more wise people than intelligent people.
That's true.
And spirituality leads us to that life of wisdom.
Okay. I was wondering, listening to you, what could have been the reason, like in the ancient past? I'm sure everybody on earth must have been spiritual. I mean, that's how I'm visualizing it. But over a period of time, we came to religion and religious dogmas, and that became our way of life. So I was wondering, what could be the reason for this shift?
I think the reason is because we become more theoretical than practical.
Okay.
And there is more of blind faith. I remember my own childhood days when I used to ask my parents, my grandmother or father, what is the significance of doing Ganesh Puja, or what is the reason we have to worship Goddess Durga with 8 arms? Why all this? They could not explain. And so I could not be convinced to do it because I want the logic, proper answer. I think that is how we moved away. So people who are not convinced, then they get converted into other religions.
Right.
And so I think slowly the belief in religion become less and less because it's not explained to us properly.
Right.
The significance behind the symbols and rituals that is performed. And so some people even have become atheist, agnostic. They think that there is no God. Everything is nature and science.
Right.
But then again, I think it is coming back to the original practice that there is something beyond this physical world. There is something beyond that we see through these eyes. So there is that energy that's making everything move.
Right.
Even
as I recall my childhood days, I was also not very attracted to the homas and the abhishekas, and even I had a lot of questions. What's the purpose of pouring milk and water? And now, as I'm being exposed to spirituality, and from what you're explaining to me right now, it's making a lot of sense that spirituality is the core of life. And
it's also a life based on truth. Spirituality is real. Spirituality is immortal. Spirituality is truth.
Okay.
So if I'm able to live a life based on truth, honesty, integrity, so that's the life of wisdom.
But again, going back to my earlier question, how do we get the power to, because it's one thing where I understand, okay, I have to have these 5 qualities in order to be spiritual. But in this lifestyle that we are in right now, it's not that easy to have these qualities. I mean, it's one thing to understand it intellectually and another thing to put it into practice.
Everything is connected with practice. For example, first thing, I need to rediscover myself. I need to get to know myself, who I am. I need to understand how I can attain mastery over my own sense organs, mastery over the 5 elements of matter. So when I have attained that self-mastery over myself, I begin to go beyond, transcend beyond physical limitations. That is spirituality.
Okay.
To embrace the whole world as my family.
Okay.
It's a transcending beyond limitations into the unlimited, so that I can embrace the whole world as my family. It doesn't matter which religion they belong to, which part of the world they are born. After all, they are also like me, a living being. So with that kind of spiritual experience, we can easily bring into our life universal brotherhood.
Okay.
Today there are so many divisions, divisions in our heart, division on the air, in the water, everywhere.
Correct.
The division is because we have lost in touch with that spiritual being. So once I'm able to rediscover that spiritual energy, the spiritual being, and see others with the same feeling, then I am able to interact with each other with that positive values, and so embrace the whole world as my family.
Yeah. It sounds so exciting, if I may use that word, the way you have described it. It's almost like, I want to get more into the spiritual aspect of the life, and The one statement that you made, which was very beautifully said, was spirituality is beyond limitations.
Yes.
Whether it is physical limitations or our physical barriers that we have set for ourselves. At this point, can we go into a meditation about, how to experience spirituality in our life?
I think it's possible, but before that, I need to have the faith and realization that who am I really, where I have come from, why I am here, the purpose of my existence. We know that there is a difference between life and living. So life is for all time, living is for now. So spirituality awakens this awareness, that I am not just living my life, but I have to create my life. So I exist forever. So this awareness of eternity in spirituality actually gives us a lot of power. So we can have a kind of reflection for a few minutes. To bring back into our consciousness, returning to the basic, returning to the seed, returning to the roots. So let us just become aware that this whole universe is made up of two types of energies, physical and metaphysical, physical and spiritual. In fact, our body itself is made up of two types of energies. Body, which is material, physical, the soul, which is spiritual. So let us spend a few minutes only focusing on the spiritual aspect of our existence. As I sit and reflect on my life, I ask myself this question: who am I really? When I introduce myself to others, what do I tell them? I may tell them my name, my occupation, my relationship. Is that all me? Is there anything more that I can think about myself? As I ponder over these thoughts, I begin to see another layer emerging from deep within. I have feelings, I have emotions, I even have memories. So all these subtle aspects are contained in a tiny, a living light. The spirit. So I visualize that spirit with the mind, intellect, and subconsciousness on the screen of my mind. I become the master of my body. So now I allow this awareness of being light, and let this light of the soul flow through my body. I go beyond limitations, and I can see myself embracing the whole world as one family. So practice this consciousness every now and then you will be able to see the difference between being spiritual and being wise. Thank you.
Didi, thank you so much for explaining to us very beautifully the difference between spirituality and religion and the different facets of spirituality. So in our next episode, we will continue this discussion, and we'll take up some other topics as well. So we look forward to seeing you with us again in our next episode. Thank you.
Thank you.
Didi has very beautifully explained to us the difference between spirituality and religion. And what struck out when I was listening to her was the fact that spirituality is all embracing, it's all encompassing. And it is possible to be spiritual and religious as long as we understand what religion is. When we perform the acts, we have to do them with an understanding. And the definitions of spirituality that Didi gave us, the 5 qualities of spirituality, it almost sounds like a very exciting journey to embark upon, to be spiritual, to have spirituality in our life. So we will continue to bring different topics to you related to spirituality, to being human, and we look forward to your continued support. So keep watching us. And as we conclude this episode, I would like to thank all of you for being part of this discussion. Until then, take care and Om Shanti.